Okay, good afternoon. So today's discussion will continue with overtime pay. No, however, let us briefly summarize the topics that we discussed last meeting. So last meeting we already discussed about the hours of work, premium pay, and of course the holiday pay. No, so with the premium pay, that will be the additional pay that the employee will receive. Now, if the employee works on a uh, particular day, which is depends on the type of the day, no, or kind of day. Like example, if the employee work on a holiday, so the employee will receive an additional pay, which is the premium pay. Okay, so we had an assignment for that uh, to apply your learnings now with regards to the different percentage given on a type of or kind of day, no. Now, for today, we're going to talk about another benefit, which is an overtime pay, no? Which you can see under Article 87 of the Labor Code. Okay, so when you say overtime pay, it actually refers to the additional compensation for work performed beyond 8 hours a day. Okay, so again, the normal hours, maximum hours is 8 hours, but if the employer requires you to work for more than 8 hours, that is the employee is now entitled with overtime pay. Okay. Uh, with regards to coverage, it is the same, no, with the premium pay and holiday pay, who are those excluded with the payment of overtime pay. So the minimum overtime pay rates vary according to the day of the overtime work is performed. So in other words, it would depend if it's a special day, a regular holiday, it is a rest day of an employee, no? So the overtime pay will vary. Okay. So generally, the premium pay for work performed on rest days, special days, or regular holidays is included as part of the regular rate of the employee in the computation of overtime rate for overtime work rendered on said days. Now, for example, if the employee is scheduled to, uh, to have his rest day on Wednesday, for example, and then the employer asks the employee to work on Wednesday, which is his rest day. So if the employee works on that particular day, then the employee will be given premium pay. And of course, at the same time, an overtime pay since it is his rest day. So the premium pay for that, having the day, his rest day, he will receive a premium pay of 130%. But since he worked for that particular day, then it being his rest day, the employee will be entitled to an overtime pay of 130%. Okay, so we'll uh, apply those provision on the following slides. No, so these are the different overtime pay rates. No, depending on the particular day. Okay, so if the employee works uh, during an ordinary working days or his regular work day, more than 8 hours. So the employee will be entitled for an overtime pay of 25% of his hourly rate. Okay. Then the second one is for work in excess of 8 hours on a scheduled rest day or a special holiday. So the employee will be entitled to 30% of the hourly rate on said days. Okay. But it being a rest day or special day, aside from the overtime pay, the employee is also entitled for a premium pay, no, as we've discussed already last meeting. Then the next one is for work in excess of 8 hours on special day, which falls on a scheduled rest day. Okay. So it is a special day, but at the same time, it is his regular scheduled rest day. The employee is entitled to an overtime pay of 30% of the hourly rate on top of the premium pay, which is 150% on that particular day, you know. So then for work in excess of 8 hours on a regular holiday, so the employee is also entitled for a 30% overtime pay of his hourly rate. Again, on top of the holiday premium pay, which is 200%. So in excess of 8 hours, the employee will receive 30% overtime pay. Then lastly, for work in excess of 8 hours on a regular holiday, which also falls on a scheduled rest day, the employee is also entitled to additional 30% as an overtime pay of the hourly rate on said days. Of course, on top of the premium pay given for regular holiday work, which also falls the employee's scheduled rest day. Okay, so before you can compute, number one, the first thing that you need to know is to determine the daily rate and get the hourly rate. So all you need to do is divide his daily rate to 8 hours in order for you to get his hourly rate. So example, if his daily rate is 404, you just divide it by 8 hours to get the hourly rate, which is 50.50 per hour. Now let's have an example, no? Let's have employee A details. So employee A has a daily rate of 404 pesos and works overtime on a particular day for 4 hours or a 12 hours total work for the day. So compute his total pay depending on the different circumstances. Okay, so this is the first example. So for work in excess of 8 hours performed on ordinary working days, meaning to say the employee works during his regular working day. So the employee was asked to render overtime for 4 hours, for example. So since it is on his regular or ordinary working days, the employee is entitled to receive an additional 25% overtime pay of his hourly rate. So given the daily rate of 404, you divide it by 8 to get the hourly rate, and then you multiply it to overtime pay of 125%. So from 50.50, which is the hourly rate, times 125, you will get an hourly rate of 63.125 times 125% overtime rate per hour. So you will get 78.9906, or if you round it off, 78.91 hourly rate for that overtime. And then you just multiply it to total of 4 hours, which is the overtime hour, no? So you will get an overtime pay, a total overtime pay of for 4 hours of 315.625, or round it off to 315.663. Okay, that will be the 4 hours overtime pay. Now, if you will be asked to get the total pay for that day, so which is 12 hours. So since it is an ordinary working day, so you will just get the 100% of his daily rate, which is 404, no, without any premium pay, since that is just an ordinary or regular work day of the employee. And you just add the overtime pay of 315.625 or 63 for 4 hours work. So the total pay for the employee for that 12 hours work on during his regular or ordinary working day is 719.625 or 719.63. Okay, so that's the first example in application of this scenario, no, or circumstance. Now the next one is, what if the employee work in excess, no, or renders overtime on a scheduled rest day or special day? So in other words, the employee works during his rest day, or maybe during a special holiday. So if the employee works in more than 8 hours on that particular day, so the employee will be entitled to an additional 30% of the hourly rate on said days, on top of course, the premium pay, since it is not just an ordinary day, it is a rest day or a special holiday. So based on the premium pay provision, the employee is entitled to 130% premium pay, additional pay for that particular day. And of course, the overtime of 30% or 30%. Okay, so again, you need to get the hourly rate, which is 50.50. We multiply it at 130% as the premium pay for 8 hours, having it the day as the employee's rest day or special day. So the premium pay for that particular, for the first 8 hours is 130%, no? So you will get the hourly rate of 65.65. That will be the first 8 hours hourly rate inclusive of the premium pay. Now, if you compute the overtime hours, of course, the hourly rate based on the first 8 hours work inclusive of premium, that will be your basis to get the hourly rate for the overtime pay, no? So instead of 50.50, since it has an additional or a premium pay, so your hourly rate is now 65.65. Okay, so again, since it is an overtime work, the employee is entitled to 130% overtime pay for his 4 hours overtime work. So his hourly rate now is 85.345. Again, if you can may round it off to 85.35, no? Then you multiply it to 4 hours since that is the 4 hours overtime work. So his 4 hours overtime pay now is 341.38. Okay? Now, if you will be asked to get the total pay for the day, all you need to do is first get the premium pay for the first 8 hours, which is 404 daily rate times 130%. 30% there is the premium pay for that particular day, which is his rest day or maybe special day. And then you multiply the 4 hours work, which is 341.38. So you will get 525.20 for the first 8 hours inclusive of premium plus 341.38 overtime pay, a total of 866.58. So again, his total pay for 12 hours on that rest day or special day of work is 866.58. Then the next illustration is the application of work in excess of 8 hours during a special day, which also falls on a scheduled rest day. So if that will be the case, if the employee works overtime, so the employee is entitled to additional 30% of his hourly rate on said days. Okay, so again, using the example, daily rate is 404 divided by 8. Then you multiply it to 150, which stands for the premium pay of a special day, which also falls on a regular rest day. So that is based on the premium pay percentage. And of course, the 130% for the overtime pay. Okay? So you get the hourly rate, multiply it to 150%. That will be the first 8 hours premium pay, no? So you just divide it by 8. Total pay, the total rate for that, you will have now a 75.75 hourly rate, which is inclusive of the premium pay. Now, based on that, you will compute the hourly rate, which has an additional 130%. So you multiply it, the new hourly rate, which now will now be 98.475, or again, round it off to 98.48. So you just multiply it to 4 hours overtime work. You will get an overtime pay for 4 hours of work, total of 393.90. So again, if you'll be asked to get the total pay for the day, all you need to do is first apply first the premium pay to the daily rate of 404, multiply it to 150% as the premium pay for that particular day, and then you multiply the total overtime pay of 393.90. So you will get 606 plus 393.90. So yeah, the total pay for that 12 hours of work during a special day, which also falls on a regular rest day, is 999.90 or 1,000 if you round it off now. Okay, so the next illustration is for work in excess of 8 hours on a regular holiday. So the overtime work for that is entitles the employee to additional 30% of the hourly rate on said days. Okay, so again, use the prior example of 404 daily rate divided by 8 to get the hourly rate. And of course, multiply it to the premium pay of 200% since it is a regular holiday. And of course, the 130% for overtime work. So the hourly rate is 50.50, multiply it to 200%. That will be your first 8 hours hourly rate. Okay, if you want to get the daily rate, 404 times 200%, that is your first 8 hours total pay. For the overtime pay, once you get the first 8 hours uh, total pay, 8 hours, you just divide it to 8, so you will get 101 per hour rate, no? Per hour, I mean the hourly rate, the new hourly rate, inclusive of the premium pay of 200%. So based on that hourly rate, you multiply it now by 130% as an overtime rate, and then it will now be 131.30 per hour, no? Inclusive of the premium pay for the first 8 hours, then multiply it to 4 hours for your overtime work. So your overtime total pay for 4 hours will now be 525.20. Now, again, if you will be asked to get the total pay for the day, so all you need to do, multiply 404 times 200%, that would be the premium pay for it having as a regular holiday. And then multiply the 4 hour overtime work, no, which is 525.20. So the first 8 hours work is actually 808, and you add up the overtime pay for 4 hours, which is 525.20. So the total pay for the day is 1,333.20. Okay? And for the last illustration, for work in excess of 8 hours on a regular holiday, which also falls on a scheduled rest day. So the overtime pay for that is also 30% for the hourly rate, no? Now again, you get the hourly rate, 404 divided by 8 times the 260 premium pay, since it is a regular holiday, which also falls on the employee's rest day. So the premium pay there is 260%. Plus, of course, you multiply it to 130 if the employee goes on overtime. So again, the overtime is 130%. Okay, so the hourly rate, 50.50 times the premium pay, 260. Okay, or 404 times 260, you will get the first 8 hours premium pay divided by 8, you will get 131.30. That's your new hourly rate, inclusive of premium pay, times the additional pay for overtime, which is 130%. You will get an hourly rate of 170.69, then multiply it for 4 hours overtime work. So your 4 hours overtime work is now 682.76. Then to get the total pay, you just multiply the first 8 hours daily, or the daily rate of 404 times premium pay of 260, and you add up the 4 hours overtime pay, which is 682.76. So now the first 8 hours premium pay is 1,050.40 plus your 4 hours overtime work of 682.76. The total pay now of the employee for that particular day's work is 1,733.16. Okay, so that's how you compute, no, the overtime pay, inclusive of premium pay, depending on the kind of day, no, whether it's a regular or ordinary work day, it's a special holiday or rest day, or it's a regular holiday or a regular holiday, and of course also the rest day of the employee. So that's the different percentage or how you compute, no, including the premium pays. Okay, now let's go to the next benefit, which is the night shift differential, no. So night shift differential is actually, or it refers to the additional compensation of 10% of an employee's regular wage for each hour of work performed between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. So again, for those employees who work during or night shift, or from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. in the morning, no? So the employee is entitled to 10% additional pay per hour. Okay. Now this is the computation of night shift differential. So for example, if the employee work on ordinary day, which is his regular work day, no? So the employee is entitled to 100%. And then Sunday or rest day, 130. And this one. So these are the respective percentages, no? Now, for ordinary day, 100%, if you apply the night shift differential of 10%, so 1 times 1.1, which is 110% actually. So, in an ordinary day, and if the employee works during a night shift or from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., the employee is entitled to 110%. No? And if it's the employee's rest day and working on a night shift, it's 1.3 times 1.1, so 140% for his night shift differential, so on and so forth. Okay, then this one also continuation. So again, this will guide you, no, on what particular day the employee works, and that will be the percentage to be used if you want to compute the night shift differential. Okay, so that will guide you, no, on how much will be the night shift differential depending on it, kind of the day, no. Okay, so another benefit is for the service charges, based on Article 96. However, it is being amended by Republic Act number 113/16, no. So again, for this one and of course the following Republic Acts that we're going to discuss, I want you to read in detail those special law, no, the Republic Acts, because it has the implementing rules and regulations and it's very detailed. So, but for purposes of class discussion, I will just give you the important points, no, on the different benefits based on the labor standards. But as a student and an HR practitioner later on, I would really encourage you to read special laws, no, or the Republic Acts for more information on the particular benefit. Okay. So for service charges, all establishments collecting service charges, such as hotels, restaurants, and other similar establishments, including those entities operating primarily as private subsidiaries of the government. So, or in other words, those establishments that has or service charges, no? So for the coverage, all employees except managerial employees, based on those we learned, no, on our preliminary discussion, who are those managerial employees, are not covered, no, or not included in the payment of service charges. So under the direct employee of the covered establishment, regardless of their positions, designations, or employment status, and irrespective of the method by which their wages are paid. So in other words, whether the employee is a regular or probationary or casual, contractual, it doesn't matter, no? The employees are all entitled to be given the service charges. Now, with the distribution of service charges, all service charges actually collected shall be distributed completely and equally. So before, there's actually 85 and 15%, no? That's the old one, but for the 2020 edition, it was being amended on the special law on the previous slide. So it is now distributed completely and equally based on actual hours of day's work or service rendered among the covered employees, including those already receiving the benefit of sharing in the service charges. So in other words, it depends on the number of hours worked. So on a particular period, no? Now, the frequency of distribution of service charges collected shall be distributed and paid to the covered employees once every 2 weeks or twice a month at intervals not exceeding 16 days. So in other words, during the 15 days work, no? So in a month, there are actually two pay period on the 15th for the first 15 days, and then on the 30th for the 16 to 30th days, no? So that covers the 2 weeks for the first payday. So normally the service charges will be included in the respective pays, no, during payday of the employee. Okay. Now, again, for the distribution, it would depend, no? So if the employee is being absent for 15 days for the first week, then the employee will not be given service charges, no? So if he is present for the rest of the days for the first half, which is, or for the first 2 weeks, then the employee will be given a service charge. I mean, his share, no, on the service charges. Okay, so next benefit is the service incentive leave, or the SIL, no? Which will find under Article 95 of the Labor Code. So every employee who has rendered at least 1 year of service is entitled to SIL of 5 days with pay. Okay? So for those employees who already served for 1 year or equivalent of 12 months will now be entitled to a 5-day service incentive leave with pay. So it can be used for sick or vacation leave purposes. However, unused SIL is commutable or convertible to cash at the end of the year. So depending on the practice of the company, so for example, at the end of December 31, depending on, again, the company practice, normally for the sake of computing or checking, no, on how many days remaining for it to be converted to cash, normally it will be given on the following month, no, which is of course January of the year. Okay. So the basis of conversion shall be the salary rate at the date of conversion. Of course, the current daily rate, no, will be the basis. So depending on when it will be distributed, whatever the daily rate of the employee on that particular distribution date, it will now be the basis on the conversion. Okay, so for example, if the employee before that received 400, but not 400, yeah, 404, and then by the time it will be converted to cash, there will be an increase of his daily rate. For example, instead of 404, it will now be 415. So the basis of conversion will now be 415, since that is his current daily rate during the distribution or the conversion of his SIL. Okay, so the next benefit is maternity leave. Based on special law or the Republic Act 8282. However, it is amended by Republic Act 11210, no, which is the Expanded Maternity Act. Okay, so again, for these special laws, I would really or strongly encourage you as an HR students to read fully the Republic Act, especially there is the implementing rules and regulations, or the IRR, no? That those are very specific. So I would recommend for you to read those special laws. So for the maternity leave, it applies to all covered female employees regardless of civil status, employment status, and legitimacy of her child. So in other words, whether the female employee is single, so as long as she's pregnant and will of course deliver, she will be entitled for this benefit, no? So for the total days is actually 105 days with full pay, meaning 100%, and additional 15 days with full pay in case the female employee qualifies as a solo parent under Republic Act 8972 or the Solo Parents Welfare Acts of 2000. Okay, now we'll discuss on a separate slide the solo parent leave or parental leave. So if you will, if the female employee is also a solo parent, no, on top of 105 days, the employee is also entitled to an additional 15 days full pay. Okay. So maternity, again, regardless of civil status, whether single or married, employment status, whether probationary, regular, or casual, and legitimacy, whether the more the female employee, I mean the child, will be delivered legitimate or illegitimate. So it doesn't matter, as long as the or I mean the female employee is going to give birth. Okay. So in case of miscarriage or emergency termination of pregnancy, the maternity leave shall be for 60 days with full pay. Okay. So miscarriage or emergency termination of pregnancy, the maternity leave will be 60 days instead of 105 days, no? So in cases of live childbirth, an additional maternity leave of 30 days without pay can be availed of at the option of the female employee, provided that the employer shall be given due notice. Okay, so there's an option to go on additional 30 days. Okay. Now, for eligibility, in other words, who are those qualified to avail this maternity leave? So the female employee must have at least 3 monthly contributions to SSS, no, in that 12-month period immediately. So before the delivery or the semester of childbirth, miscarriage, or emergency termination of pregnancy, and she shall have notified her employer of her pregnancy and the probable date of her childbirth, which notice shall be transmitted to SS in accordance with its rules and regulations. So in other words, if the female employee got pregnant, so she should notify her employer, so there should be a prior notification so that the employer will notify SSS. And then, of course, the employee should qualify those contributions stated. So at least 3 monthly contributions. Okay. So for example, if the employee is just new to the company and that will be her first job, and then she's due to deliver on her first month on her first job, so there will still be no contributions. So the employee there in that particular circumstance will not be able to avail the maternity leave, no, because she wasn't able to comply this condition. Okay, so the employee should have at least 3 monthly contributions to SS in the 12-month period immediately preceding the semester. So you need to count backward 12 months, no? So at least the employee has 3 monthly contribution on that particular 12-month period. Okay. Then it is also granted to qualified female employee in every instance of pregnancy, miscarriage, or emergency termination of pregnancy regardless of frequency. So with the new expanded maternity benefit, so all instances of pregnancy, unlike before, it is only limited to 4 deliveries. But for now, there's no more limit, no? So it's granted to qualified female employee in every instance of pregnancy, miscarriage, or emergency termination of pregnancy regardless of frequency. Again, I would like to encourage you to really read the implementing rules and regulations of the 105 days on expanded maternity leave law, or the Republic Act 11-210. Okay, the next benefit is the paternity leave, or based on the special law on Republic Act 18187. So it is granted to all married male employees in the private sector regardless of their employment status. Of course, the purpose of this benefit is to allow the husband to lend support to his wife during her period of recovery and or in nursing her newborn child. Of course, government employees are also entitled to this benefit and shall be governed by the Civil Service Law rules. So the paternity leaves shall apply to the first 4 deliveries of the employee's lawful wife with whom he is cohabiting. So when you say cohabiting, it means the obligation of the husband and wife to live together. So in other words, the husband and wife are living together, excuse me. And then it shall be for 7 days with full pay, consisting of basic salary. However, if it will not be availed of, it shall not be convertible to cash and shall not be cumulative. So usage shall be after delivery without prejudice to an employer's policy of allowing the employee to avail of the benefit before or during the delivery, provided that the total number of days shall not be more than 7 calendar days for each covered delivery. Okay, so in other words, it depends on the company rules and regulations, no? Whether if the company allows the employee, the father, to avail the paternity leave even before the delivery or after the delivery, as long as it's 7 calendar days, meaning it's straight, no? Not working days. Okay, so calendar days is from Monday to Sunday, but if when you say working days, only those working days. Now, if the employee regularly works for 5 days, so it's example, if it's Monday to Friday, so then next additional 2 days will be the following week, which is Monday and Tuesday, since those are working days. But in the case of paternity leave, it is for 7 calendar days. So it's Monday to Sunday or whatever the start date, no? So it should be continuous. Now, what about the conditions for entitlement? So the following are the conditions, no, for the employee to be able to qualify. First is he should be an employee at the time of the delivery of his child. Of course, he should be employed, no? And then he is also cohabiting with his spouse at the time that she gives birth or suffers miscarriage. So they are living together. Then he has applied for paternity leave with his employer within a reasonable period of time from the expected date of delivery or as may be provided by company rules and regulations. So same with maternity, no? The employee should notify the employer for the upcoming delivery of his wife. Again, but there are also, depending on the company rules, no? Some companies would allow the notification just in time, no? The wife gives birth, okay? So, or depending on the employee's application for paternity leave. But normally, the employee avails it on the day his wife will going to give birth, no? And of course, the last condition is his wife has given birth or suffered a miscarriage. In other words, whether his wife delivers or suffered a miscarriage, still the employee could avail the paternity leave, no, of 7 days. Okay, so that's the paternity leave. Now let's discuss the parental leave for solo parents. So this is the one I've referred, no, during with the benefit on maternity leave, wherein an additional 15 days will be given if the employee who gave birth is also a solo parent. So the employee is entitled to additional 15 days. Okay, if the employee chose, no, to avail this benefit. So this parental solo or parental leave for solo parent is granted to any solo parent or individual who is left alone with the responsibility of parenthood due to the following, no? There are actually 10 circumstances. First is giving birth as a result of rape or as used by the law other crimes against chastity. Okay? So next is the death of spouse. Third is spouse is detained or is serving sentence for a criminal conviction for at least 1 year. Okay, so if the husband or wife, whoever it is, who was convicted for at least 1 year, so that the left spouse will be considered a solo parent, no? And then next is physical or mental incapacity of spouse as certified by a public medical practitioner. So for example, if the husband is declared mentally ill, as declared by the public, no? So it should be the government medical practitioner that declares the mental incapacitated spouse that he has that illness, no? So the other spouse will be considered as a solo parent. Then next is legal separation or de facto separation from spouse for at least 1 year, provided that he or she is entrusted with the custody of the children. So in other words, if the spouses had a legal separation, whether declared by the court or de facto, meaning they are physically separated, no, outside court or without any declaration of legal separation by the court, but they are physically separated for at least 1 year. Of course, the spouse who took care or is entrusted with the custody of their children will also be considered as a solo parent. Okay, and then next is the declaration of nullity or annulment of marriage as decreed by the court. So if they are declared, the marriage is being declared as null, or they had they annulled their marriage. Of course, there should be a declaration by the court, no, that their marriage is annulled. Okay, so again, for the parent or the parent or the spouse who took care or entrusted with the custody of the children, he or she will be declared solo parent. And then abandonment of spouse for at least 1 year. So if again your spouse, whether husband or the wife, abandon the other spouse for at least 1 year, he is also considered a solo parent. Then unmarried father, mother who was preferred to keep and rear his or her child or children instead of having others care for them or give them up to a welfare institution. So for those single father or mother, who took care of the child, is also considered a solo parent. And then any other person who solely provides parental care and support to a child, children, provided that he or she is duly licensed as a foster parent by the DSWD or duly appointed legal guardian by the court. Okay, so in other words, any person who provides parental care. For example, you adopted a child, no? Or you support a child, of course, you need to have it should be a legal adoption, for example, no? So you need to follow the process. Okay? And then lastly, any family member who assumes the responsibility of head of family as a result of the death, abandonment, disappearance, or prolonged absence of the parents or solo parent, provided that such abandonment, disappearance, or prolonged absence lasts for at least 1 year. Okay? So, example for this is, for example, if you're you have 5 siblings now and you're the eldest and both your parents are already they already died, no? So you were left to take care of your other siblings. So you support all your other siblings, so you will also be considered as a solo parent since you are the head of the family. Okay, so of course it should be for 7 working days every year with full pay, and of course if it not be availed of, it shall not be convertible to cash, unlike the SIL or service incentive leave that is convertible to cash. But the rest, paternity, parental, it is not convertible to cash, no, unless specifically agreed on. In other words, if your company rules and policy states that it will be convertible to cash, then it will be converted. But for the minimum, based on the standards, it is not convertible to cash. So a change in the status or circumstance of the parent claiming the benefit under the law such that he or she is no longer left alone with the responsibility of parenthood shall terminate his or her eligibility for this benefit. So again, or in other words, if for example, if you're a solo parent or you are a single mother and gave birth to your child, but later on you got married, then there is already now a change in your status, no? And you will no longer be considered as a solo parent, and you cannot avail the parental leave benefit anymore. So for the conditions of entitlement, the following will be the conditions, no? First is he or she has rendered at least 1 year of service, whether continuous or broken. So for the employee or for the solo parent to avail such benefit, the employee must already rendered or already working for at least 1 year in the company, whether it's continuous or broken, as long as it's an authorized absent, uh, as long as it's already 1 year. And then he or she has notified his employer that she will avail herself with it with a reasonable period. So again, there's a prior notification. And very important, he or she has presented to his employer a solo parent identification card, which may be obtained from the SWD office of the city or municipality where he or she resides. So without this identification card from the SWD, the employee cannot avail this parental leave benefit. Okay, and it will be renewed every year, no, for the employee to be able to avail this. Okay, so that ends our discussion for today. So next meeting, we'll continue to discuss the other benefits, starting with the leave for victims of violence against women and their children, or the VAUSI law, no? It's actually 10 days. Okay, so I think there will be 7 or 8 remaining benefits which must be given, no, to the employees based on the law under the labor standards. So we will be able to finish our uh, topic or coverage for the first half before our major exam. After the major exam, we're going to discuss the labor relations or the employee relations, no? Which of course governs the relationship between the employer and employee. Okay, so so again, all your questions, please submit it to our class Biddle, or if not, you can directly message me if you want an urgent answer or clarification on that particular topic which you find difficult to understand, and uh, so that we can you, uh, just reserve your question if you like, and we'll discuss it during our group weekly discussion. Okay, so as an announcement, the office instructed us faculty to give a short quiz on Monday. So please study the lessons and of course the previous one on premium, holiday pay, hours of work until uh, until today's discussion as part of the coverage for our quiz on Monday, which will be either probably be given on the first 20 or 30 minutes, or maybe before the subject ends, no? I mean, the class schedule ends on Monday. So I'll just give you an update in our Facebook or group chat, no, in Messenger. So I'll give you further advice or updates in our group chat. Okay, so that ends our topic for today. So again, study the discussions very well for you to be prepared and be able to answer our quiz on Monday. Okay, so that's end our discussion, and have a good day.